Hello, welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem alongside me, my good friend Noam Dworman, owner of the Comedy Cellar. Hello, Noam.
Hello, Hatem.
And great guest today. We have the return of our friend Brian Seitchik. He is a Republican strategist, and he is directed competitive campaigns in Arizona, California, Florida, all over, and worked with some of the top names in the Republican Party, like Marco Rubio and the one and only Donald Trump. Hi, Brian.
Happy to
Good to
be
see
here.
you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
And for the first time here, and we're very excited to have him, Dr. Todd Graham. He is a professor of debate at the School of Communication Studies at Southern Illinois, and he's been named the National Debate Coach of the Year 3 times. And you've seen him all over TV analyzing debates, and he's for more than 20 years been regular on CNN and more, and specializing in analyzing presidential debates. And he's here today. Hi, Todd.
Hey, that's me.
Good to see you, man. Good to have you. Was that the most entertaining debate for you ever?
The last one? No.
Yeah?
No. I mean, if you just want entertainment, you got to go for Republican primaries ever since Trump started running. So those are the most entertaining for people at home to watch. If you've got a debate with more than two people and Trump's involved, then that's pretty interesting watching for TV.
So from all of the debates that you ever been included presidential, you think Trump is definitely the character, right?
Oh, for sure. I mean, he kind of changed the nature of what presidential debates have looked like. So hopefully we'll go back and find some middle ground to them. But definitely he was a huge audience draw for those Republican primary debates in 2016 and continued to be so. It's just, he's different. He doesn't debate like anybody else. He's different. He's entertaining. So if you're a Republican and you want to be entertained, then you should never miss a debate with Donald Trump.
I always hear that debate, it's not won by the smartest person, but the most charismatic person, the one who have, a character. And you don't have to stick to the facts.
Yeah, you heard wrong. I mean, that's incorrect in almost every way, but that's what most people think. Debate's about speaking, and it's not about anything beyond that. The problem is debate is a search for the truth. That's literally all debate is. Debate's a search for the truth. We're trying to have two different people discuss policy issues and which one would be best in the future. So when you have any debate, whether it's high school kids debating or a public debate at your own university or a debate within your conference board, it's still the same goal. The goal is to find the truth, to get the best possible solutions moving forward. So that's what you have to start with when you start talking about debate. And so then we start talking about who wins debates, and the public seems to think sometimes that the prettier speaker wins debates. I can't deny that. Sometimes they do, but we need to kind of reevaluate what a debate is. It's certainly not just for public speaking and speaking prettier. It's for the arguments and analysis. Of course, that's how debates have gone throughout history. In academic debates, we only look at the argument. In fact, we do it so much so that we don't even pay much attention to presentation. And that's, I think, a shame, especially for high school and college professors. We should probably make our debaters be a little bit better at public speaking. But of all things, we really don't care what their public speaking is. We care what they say.
That's such an amazing point, because you're absolutely right. A lot of people, they don't even look at the facts or anything else. I don't know how do we get this way?
Yeah,
So
you got to have a
Brian,
better debate coach. I coached this stuff for a long time. I think that politicians all need better debate coaches. I think that they've done a pretty poor job of just recycling their advisors through, and then those people will coach your debate, or maybe they coached it 4 years ago or something, but they don't have really any information about this. They're not experts in persuasion. They're not experts in argumentation, debate. They don't know what persuades people. People like me do. We've been out there for our whole lives watching what persuades. And so there are ways to make the better speaker not be as persuasive, or the lesser speaker be more persuasive. You've got to coach that into them, though. So if you've got somebody like Biden who's never going to be as good at public speaking as Trump, then you've got to coach your way through that. And there are tons of techniques. His people just don't know any of them.
so what would you do? This is what he said. He said, I was exhausted. I didn't listen to my instincts. I should have prepared. It was a bad night. How would you prepare him for that, knowing what you know about him now?
I mean, it's a long process. You got to understand that there's a lot that goes into making a person a better debater. I get people on my debate team who have already debated, and then I basically have to restart them all over again because most of what they learned wasn't very good. It takes a while, but for Biden, simple stuff. Like I had some techniques. I think if you look at one of my columns on CNN 4 years ago, they asked me to write a column about the moderators before the presidential debate. So I did that. And that was a really interesting one. But they asked me to write one about like, what would my tips be for Biden? And pretty much they'd still be most of the same tips. But for public speaking, he's just got to know that focus on less equals better. So you have different styles of debaters. You've got your micro level debaters, somebody who really likes to analyze numbers and get into it. But then you've just got your macro debaters, your people who should look at the big picture. Biden's somebody who needs to look at the big picture more. And unfortunately, he gets tied up into knock down the little minutia sometimes.
What about you, Brian? Were you so happy with the debate ended?
I mean, that debate was, you can talk about debate tactics and this and that, but the fact is Biden was just awful. I mean, he was incoherent. That was by far sort of the big story from the debate. But from a consulting perspective, when we do debate practice, and we are certainly not as trained as the doctor here, what we try to do is sort of reverse engineer. So when I do debate prep for someone, is what I try to do is say, what is the headline that we want? If we could write the newspaper headline or the TV lead into it, what would that be? And then try to reverse engineer. So if you want the headline to be your position on immigration or your attack on something, certainly repetition is the key to that. From a political perspective, we really do try to, figure out what do we want the story to be, because most folks, certainly, below the presidential level, Senate level, gubernatorial level, but to some extent the presidential level, what they learn from the debate is not by watching it, but by the headlines, stories, tweets, and whatnot after. Now, presidential debates get a big audience, but even then, the majority of Americans will see clips on the internet or on TV, and it's hard to manufacture a viral moment, but understanding that, you have a few lines you want to get in or a few points you want to hit repetitiously, that's sort of the approach we take to debates. But getting back to the most recent debate, that was just the worst case scenario for Joe Biden. Frankly and objectively, expectations for him for that debate were really low, and he found a way to underperform expectations. We had two debates to look at in the past. In 2020, the first debate where Donald Trump just talked over Joe Biden, and I frankly believe that was arguably the last nail in Trump's coffin in 2020. People just said, I cannot take 4 more years of this guy. I'm over it. Because in that second debate, which if you recall was actually supposed to be the third debate in 2020, Donald Trump did less talking, let Joe Biden try to fill the space more. And I would argue that was to Joe Biden's detriment. And clearly Trump went into the most recent debate with the notion, okay, I'm going to let Biden talk more. That's going to hurt him. But I do believe that Trump was as shocked as much of America was by how awful Biden's performance was to start. And I think the best Trump we saw in that debate was sort of the first half hour, first 40 minutes. In the second half, where he got a little more sharp and a little more personal. I don't know if that necessarily helped him as much with the swing voters. But the fact is, this debate was about Joe Biden's inability to put a cogent sentence together. And frankly, I was watching with my wife, who's a political consultant also, and it felt like the debate was over the minute Biden walked out. We've discussed on the show before how stiff and awful his gait is. He looked somewhat bewildered. And while that might have been called a Republican talking point a few weeks ago to comment on how Biden's look and his presentation, the rest of America saw that is a reality. So, we can get into the substance of the debate and the points. And, I know some folks like to fact check Trump on this, but none of that matters. Biden is the leader of the free world and grossly underperformed. And I can't believe that there's all this chatter about whether he should or shouldn't be the nominee, when the real conversation should we be invoking the 25th Amendment? That was an epically poor performance. I think back to the Lloyd Benson, Dan Quayle debate, or even Gerald Ford, where he had some missteps in '76. None of those compared to that disaster of a performance that Biden put on the other day.
All right. Can I go now?
Your turn.
So, first of all, as for presidential debates, I'm interested to know what the expert thinks about this. You know, some debate, like maybe in college, about an issue that people don't know about or can be reached on, might have a certain strategy. It seems to me that in presidential debates, there's actually a small group of people, swing voters, who can be persuaded by these debates. I mean, look at even with Joe Biden's performance, right? It's only a small number of people who can be changed by the debate. And I always feel as a viewer that they're being coached badly. I understand the notion of taking a subject and then pivoting to the thing you really want to talk about. Now, I always feel that even that is a little overdone and actually makes me feel like, what do they take me for? They think I'm stupid? But what they do now quite often is that they don't even bother to answer the question. They just move on. Trump did this. They just move on to a different question. And I feel that this is a terrible debate strategy because you're going to preach to the choir that way. If you want to win the vote of a potentially reachable voter, he's watching you carefully to hear what your answers are because he's on the fence. And when you glaringly duck a question, I think it's often counterproductive as a strategy. And I think they do that too often. That's number one. Number two, can I share a screen of a video that what I predicted about this debate? Because I just want to show off. Can I do that, Hatem?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. How
You showing off? That's not like you.
Well, this one. Wait, that's not right. Share sound, optimize video clip. Okay, you ready, guys? Can you see that? Can you see it?
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't wait.
I know, me too.
But mostly, I mean, I can't wait to see what happens. But I have this theory that everything that Biden held out for in terms of the rules could backfire on him. I don't know if you read what I. So, for instance, Biden wants the mics cut off in between questions.
Right.
Now, at that first debate in 2020, Trump was interrupting him constantly. It was Trump's worst debate performance ever. So it's like taking Twitter away from Trump. Depriving Trump the opportunity of being a boorish asshole interrupting all the time is only good for Trump. That's number one. Number two, the crowd. Trump likes a crowd, but when Trump gets in front of a crowd, he's big, he starts riffing, whatever it is, and it looks bad on the small screen. It looks over the top. Trump, when he's one-on-one in an interview, as we've seen, can actually look quite reasonable.
Interesting.
Right? So now Trump's going to be alone in a studio, so he's going to be
It's good stuff.
He's going to be down, right? Biden is the opposite. The only time we've seen him look good has been somehow energized by crowd. If you don't believe he's on drugs, I don't think he's on drugs, or maybe, nothing major. He gets energized by a huge audience. Dan, it's very difficult to be low energy in front of a few hundred people. Very hard. So he gets energy from that. Biden is going to speak for 2 hours in an empty studio straight to camera. He's liable to completely run out of gas. And again, to sum up, everything that made Trump's first 2020 debate performance a historically bad performance, these rules would have prevented that. Can I drop the mic?
I agree. You are absolutely right. I shared some of those same sentiments. I couldn't agree with you more. I had reference the 2020 debate earlier, so I think you're absolutely right.
Wait, sorry. Go ahead. Sorry. Say it again.
Sorry. I said I completely agree with you. I had similar comments before the debate. I think that the Biden people absolutely screwed themselves by the mic cutoff. And the audience were absolutely critical to Trump's success. I didn't think the debate would go that poorly for Biden, but I'm with you. I do think the rules that Biden thought were to their benefit were going to be to their detriment. I just didn't think it would be supersized like that.
You saw Biden like this in between the shots, and like there's an empty studio. It's the most low energy situation they could put him into. A guy which his number one goal is to show that he's vital and he has vitality, they put him in the, in a soporific attitude. But having said all that, I think we have to acknowledge we can't really discuss debate strategy. The man obviously had and has a mental, a cognitive, some sort of problem. No amount of coaching can overcome that.
But you
I
asked.
mean, I don't think you
question.
get to just. I'm sorry, no, you don't just get to say that and move on. I mean, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm a debate coach. What's your argument to prove that claim you just made?
What claim? That it has a problem?
Yeah, you literally just said he has a mental problem. So I understand that he's aged and that he has more difficulty getting his sentence out. I've watched all his.
Well, I'll prove it. I mean, I'll give you why I think it's true. First of all,
and when you say mental problem, what do you mean? Do you just mean normal aging, or do you mean, as your other guest said, the 25th Amendment?
Well, I don't know. I was long of the opinion that it was normal aging, comparing it to people I've known that were quite old. Then only in recent months, I began to suspect that it was more, and I'll give you like what my thinking was. Many of the videos that the Republicans passed around were exaggerated and cut in a way which was unscrupulous. But what we did see was, like, he wasn't pooping in his pants, and I don't think he reached for an imaginary chair. I never thought that. But what we did see on a number of occasions was a man who was out of sync with what the rest of the room was in sync to. He was looking this way while they were looking that way. He was saying this while they were paying attention to that. And then finally, when Obama grabbed him by the hand and let him off the stage, that to me was very telling, because Obama knows exactly what's going on with him. He's the president of the United States. If Obama thinks that he's perfectly fine, he's just going to let him do what he wants. He's the president, right? And if he actually thinks that Biden's not picking up on something, but he's perfectly fine, he might tap him on the shoulder or whisper at him. He took him by the hand. I don't think Obama meant to do that, which telegraphed to me, and we actually now, since the George Clooney editorial came out yesterday, we know this is probably very likely true, what I'm saying, because Clooney was there. He took him like the hand as if he was ailing in some way. Now that could be normal aging. I'm not on some sort of kick to define it as normal or abnormal aging. It doesn't really matter in terms of what it was. But at the point where he couldn't, in the debate, muster, not just lose his train of thought, like muster coherent statements. And since then, we find out, well, he's good before 4 p.m. It all adds up to, I mean, it was the Biden. No, it was the Hillary campaign who famously had that commercial. What if that 3 a.m. phone call comes? And it was Biden who famously said that Obama is going to be tested, before he was vice presidential nominee. So, listen, I think you're reading me to be some kind of heartless guy who wants to say Biden is, full blown Alzheimer's. I'm not saying that, and I don't know that, but he's clearly in decline. It seems to be speeding up, and I can't imagine him being well enough to handle a Cuban Missile Crisis where they were up, 20 hours a night. I just can't picture that.
Is he supposed to stop the missiles himself? I think you're right. You've got a lot of really good points that why I think Biden had a bad debate. Why Biden probably, a lot of people don't want to vote for him. I gave him a terrible grade in that debate. I think all of your points are valid and legit. I just don't know if we should go a little bit beyond the hyperbole and say that there's something wrong. Because if you actually read the transcripts of the debate, don't go back and watch it again, but read the transcripts. Come back on your next podcast and tell me which one makes more sense.
Well, hold on. I did read the transcripts actually, and I did make some similar point to somebody. But some of the transcript, like the first end that we beat Medicare, whatever, some of it doesn't stand up to that. Some of it indeed does, but I mean, listen, I've known a lot of really old people, close relationships with old people. I don't think I've ever actually known an old person, even my grandmother who was 85 and could remember where she put her keys, could remember this, could remember that, that resembled that, what I saw and have seen in Biden. And then, of course, we know since then, Carl Bernstein reported that there's been 15 or 20 other incidents of him freezing up. George Clooney wrote yesterday that the Biden that he was hanging out with at that fundraiser shouldn't be president. You know, you don't know me. I have not been one of these people piling on Biden. I was for a very long time. We don't know that he's senile. He could just be old. Old people can still be wise and whatever it is. I think, and to say that it's a mental problem is not to say that it's not normal aging, but I mean, he's the same age as Mick Jagger. I mean, you know, he's not doing well. We can't imagine him president for another 4 years. It's just, I'm not trying to bash Biden. I'm not.
And I didn't say that. Remember, I started this. I just want to remind you, I'm a debate coach. That's how I have to start everything. So when I hear arguments, I just need evidence for the arguments. That's all.
I hope I had evidence.
Yeah, but
your evidence is excellent. I think your evidence is just for standard aging. Listen, I wish I was younger too. There's all kinds of stuff that everybody on this podcast probably forgets and does, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, Biden had a terrible debate, and he will, by the way, have another one. So we can get into that later. Yeah. But he's not going to get any better in the next debate.
But Todd, it's not just a terrible debate. It's 15 or 20 other reported incidents by people who
it's one of a handful of signature moments in a campaign that he completely failed. Let's also understand that this completely reinforced the biggest fear many Americans had about Joe Biden.
Trump also did have some moments like this. But I do want to ask one thing before we move on from this.
Trump didn't have any moments like that.
Because Noam asked a good question. I want to ask Todd this. When people ask a question and they just don't answer, is that a debate strategy, or what is it, in your opinion?
No, I think it's bad. Noam's right. Noam's right to be absolutely disappointed. That's the first thing you should always do, is to answer the question. You got to do things in order. Now, this last debate gave 2-minute answers, and I don't know if you're very familiar with it, but that's long. Usually they only get 90 seconds. In previous debates, maybe they only get 60 seconds. So they were giving them 2-minute answers. So that's pretty long. I think the first thing you do is answer the question. If I was coaching him, that's the first thing you do. You answer the question in front of you. The positive things that I like, very few positive things from the CNN telecast that I like, but one of them is I love having the question at the bottom of the screen. I want to see the question at all times, because it makes it easier to notice when candidates are avoiding it or not answering it. And after all, that's the only part of the debate that's important. If the moderators, which we'll talk about later, don't do their job, then candidates will just talk about their campaign speeches.
That's actually my next question. I think 50% of the debate is a moderator, somebody who can push it. Is that correct?
No.
Why? So if somebody, because I know if somebody like, say, Joe Rogan or whatever, when they wanted to debate, or even one of us, we're gonna be like, hey, answer the question.
The reason I said no is because I was doing the classic misdirection for you there, Hatem. It's even more than that. Yeah. It's even more than 50%. I'll tell you a little story. So when my debate team, what happens is we get a different topic every debate. So we go to a tournament and we have 8 preliminary rounds, and we'll get 8 different topics, and they announce it to everybody. But the only thing you know is what side of the topic you're on, if you're pro the topic or against it, and who you're debating and who your judges are. That's all you know. Then they announce the topic, and you have one topic, 15 minutes to get to that round. It could be halfway across the campus. Talk about it, figure out, and go. And they're completely different topics. We could be talking about war in Sudan. We could talk about the American judicial system. So that's my point, is we get very little time to actually discuss the topics. In the 15 minutes we get, do you know what we spend at least 8 minutes on? Talking about the judges, because we generally know who they are. They're on the list. They're a coach from some other team. We have files on the judges. We talk about what they've liked, what they've not liked before, et cetera. So we do a ton of work on what the audience is expecting beforehand, et cetera. And in this case, it's like studying the moderators. So while I'm not asking candidates to really study the moderators, I'm asking my debaters to think about who their judges are and then adapt according to what that judge is. Well, in this case, the moderators have a lot of work to do. I've talked ad nauseum over the last 2 decades about how we need moderator training. We literally train moderators for junior high, middle school, for high school debates, for college debates. We train them for public debates. We train moderators all over the place. There are people who are professionals at this. Yet our reporters seem to think because they're a reporter, they don't need much training. Debate moderating is not at all the same as reporting or interviewing. It's completely different. It requires a different skill set. And so if I was going to do anything to change presidential debates, the first thing I would do would be to implement moderator training.
That's a great point. I always thought that, it's not only in this debate, in other debates too, they always skip the question. And if they answer the last 10 seconds or whatever, with what Brian was saying before, repeated paragraph that that they've been coached to say that over and over and over and over. And you'd be like, what the? All right. So let's move on a little bit. How about, what should happen now? If you were to advise Biden, Brian.
I mean, I don't see how Joe Biden can win the general election. The fact is, there's been a block of voters who lean Democrat, who probably want to vote Democrat, but are simply unable to pull the lever for an addled old man. And if Joe Biden stays in this race, and I think he wants to, but I do think they're going to eventually push him out. If Biden stays in this race, Democrats are going to get shellacked. They're going to lose the House. They're going to lose the Senate. They're going to lose the presidency. And this is really going to be because of the self-indulgence of vanity of an 80-plus-year-old man. He has absolutely got to go. If you're a Republican, you want Biden to stay. If you're a Trump hater, you absolutely need Biden to go.
Who should replace him? And that will be the
who should replace him is not the question. I think it's who's going to replace him. I don't think it's possible to get rid of Kamala Harris. The Democratic Party is grounded in identity politics, and you cannot kick out the African-American female vice president at this point. If they wanted to go a different direction, whether that was Governor Whitmer or Governor Newsom or a senator.
Can I ask you about that?
Sure, but I'm just saying, hold on, then I'm happy to. They would have had to go through the Democrat process. You cannot kick out the vice president this late in the game. Democrats will just be up in arms here because, again, they're grounded in identity politics. So I think we're looking at Kamala Harris and a VP to be named later.
So let me ask you about that because I actually don't believe that. It reminds me of when Trump moved. Hatem, you might want to mute me. When Trump moved the Israeli embassy, the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, everybody knew the Palestinians, the Arabs, the whole world was gonna go crazy, and actually nobody cared. I don't think the Democratic Party is going to care barely at all if Kamala Harris is passed over. Very few of them supported her when they had a chance to vote for her in the primaries in 2020. Everybody knows she's bad. They want to win. They are a party that believes in identity politics, but that doesn't mean that they apply it to themselves all the time. Just like the New York Times supports labor unions, but then we're getting their own labor troubles. And I think that, what are they going to do? Vote for Trump?
They're not going to vote. Hold on. They're not going to vote.
They will vote. They will vote. There'll be some huffing and puffing. Nobody cares enough about Kamala Harris to not vote for the Democrats when they know she's awful. They know if they thought she's being passed over because she's black, then you might have a problem. But you know what? Even in California, when they vote on racial preferences, they vote against them. Like what people bluster about is not necessarily what really makes them tick. People are more reasonable than you give them credit for.
I don't share that sentiment in a year when Trump is polls show he's cutting into black support. If you told me right now Trump's going to get 20% of the black vote, this thing is over because that means he wins Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And hold on, let's understand why Hillary won in 2016. Yes, it's because Trump dragged out a ton of new blue collar voters who used to vote Democrat, who moved to Republican, but it's also because the African-American percentage, which overvoted their population for Obama in 8 and 12, went back to undervoting their population.
But then why did black
Hold
people
on, hold
support?
on.
No,
The
no.
fact
Why
is
did
African Americans in
just
Detroit
Just
and
let me in for 1
Milwaukee
second.
and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh
Don't
did not turn
filibuster,
out in
please.
16.
Don't filibuster. It's still a conversation. Why then do they let? Why did black people vote overwhelmingly for Biden over black candidates in 2020?
Well, first of all, because he has this special bond with black voters. I saw it in focus groups because he was Obama's vice president, so we had a special bond there. But the fact is, Trump is cutting into black votes. And if you piss off, you cut Kamala Harris. And believe me, I'm not defending Kamala Harris. I think she's awful. I lived in California when she was the attorney general. I just think you are going to have a mutiny and have a depressed turnout among black voters, which will cost Democrats that blue wall.
All right, let me put the arguments to you in a way that I think that you'll understand and will. I don't like. I'm sure there's some truth to it. This reducing to black people as mindless people who all they can think of is their color. Trump had this insight. Trump's cutting into black vote. Trump's cutting into Hispanic votes.
Big time.
A mirror image of you would be telling me he can't try to close the border. He's going to lose the Hispanic vote because all these people care about is letting other Hispanic people into the country. In other words, it's not that simple. They are actually thinking human beings who understand and see Kamala Harris. They've seen the same videos. They know she's awful. They understand that they want to beat Trump. And some of them might not vote. On the other hand, there's a whole lot of people close to my way of thinking who are never going to vote for Kamala Harris. They want a moderate Democrat. That's why Biden won. That's why Biden was finally able to squeeze over the line in the swing states. Because who are you talking about here? It doesn't matter if he cuts into the black voter or not. There are 80,000 voters in 3 or 4 swing states, and they're the only people that matter here. And they're not going to abandon the Democrats because of Kamala Harris.
I understand that block of swing voters, but that calculus is also based on Democrats winning 90% of black voters. You know, if a black voter votes Republican, it's like a double vote. It's not just a vote for a Republican, but it's a vote that Democrats believe was already banked to them.
I'm hoping that don't pick Harris just so you have to come on this podcast again and tell me I was right. Yeah.
I will certainly do so if that's the case. I just don't see that happening.
Do you understand how many moderate people will vote for a Whitmer or a Shapiro, one of these people
first of all,
who will never vote for Kamala Harris?
I agree with you. I think Whitmer is absolutely their strongest candidate. So we are in agreement that Whitmer or Shapiro would be better. I just don't think that the Democrat Party is going to go along for that, and I think
that's not matter. They might not have the wisdom. They might not have the wisdom.
I don't think like a Democrat, obviously, but I just they are really fearful.
Let me ask Todd about his opinion, but I want to add one thing to this about this part is knowing the Democrats, they're gonna make the big fight is we have to beat Trump. So yes, they will get rid of Kamala. I don't see why wouldn't, because the big monster is going to be Trump, and they're going to rally everything they're going to do around it. Todd, what do you think? What's your thoughts on that?
I pitched a story to the editors of CNN Opinion about a month and a half ago, just as soon as the debates were announced. And the story I pitched, which they went, we have other people that write these things. So I didn't get to write it. But the story I pitched was this. What happens if, in a likely circumstance, Biden has a terrible first debate against Trump? If that happens, because it's before the conventions, there is, I think, a likelihood that big money donors and others in the party will start to ask him to step aside, and there will be a lot brewing before the convention. I didn't get to publish that piece, but that's exactly how it turned out. And Noam, I think everything you said was on point, by the way. I don't think that the Democratic voters, while they didn't want Kamala Harris 4 years ago, they probably still don't want Kamala Harris, but they're not going to be running away in numbers. There are other options out there than just the ones you all have mentioned. This is very speculative, obviously, but there are plenty of other options if they do decide to switch in the middle of this particular stream. But yeah, I think this was kind of, at least for somebody who knows debates, this was very predictable. I kind of knew what was going to happen in that debate. I kind of saw what was going to happen afterwards.
So let's move to the other side. What about VP? For Trump, he should announce. And by the way, tonight is the big night for Biden because it's the
NATO press conference.
The press conference. So this is it. This is this is his last chance. But also, Trump is going to announce the VP big talks about Marco Rubio. What did you call him? Little Marco? What did you
That's what
call him
Trump
before?
called him.
Yeah, Trump called him something like Marco Rubio. To win the what do you think, Brian? What would be
Well, first of all, I think Trump's VP pick is pretty irrelevant. He's obviously going to make a pick. It's going to dominate the news for 48 to 72 hours. But, he needed kind of Mike Pence to help him with evangelicals a bit in 2016, being a 2 or 3 time divorced Manhattanite. But I don't think Trump's pick means all that much this time. Because he's so defined. I mean, everybody knows what you're getting with Donald Trump, both good and bad. So I'm not sure it really matters. That being said, I don't think it's Rubio because of the ambiguity about having 2 nominees from the same state. Both being Florida residents. If you recall, when Dick Cheney became the nominee for Bush in 2000, they were both Texas residents, and Cheney had to re-register in the state of Wyoming before he was VP. But I think the most important question that Trump is going to ask this time, because I don't think we're looking at regional balance or demographic balance. I think I suspect the question Trump asks is, who would do something different than Mike Pence? I suspect that is going to be, in January of 2021, who would do things differently? And I think he picks Doug Burgum. He's a rich guy. We know Trump likes rich guys. He'll stick to the script. He won't overshadow Trump. I don't think his presidential campaign starts on day one like some other potential candidates would be. But at the end of the day, I don't think the Trump pick matters all that much. But if you want me to nail someone down, like I said, I think it's probably Doug Burgum. And I don't think Rubio gets picked. It's fun to talk about, but I just don't see Trump going in that direction.
No,
And JD Vance is just sort of a reinforcement of Trump. And the problem with JD Vance is if they win, then Governor Mike DeWine would make an appointment to the Senate. And DeWine supported someone for Senate that was not a Trumper that lost to Vance a few years ago. So there's some other additional undercurrents to consider here.
Can we have Chris Christie just for fun?
You want my opinion? Or
Yep.
So
you and then Todd.
I think that, VP picks traditionally don't matter. But to the extent that some flavor of the vibe, again, will seep into the psyche of a swing voter, I think that the somebody on the fence about Trump would be quite comforted if he were to reach out to a more establishment Republican deliberative person like a Rubio, somebody that harkens back to a more responsible era, because I think that what most swing voters are worried about with Trump, and I think I can channel them, so they're pretty keen on his basic policy approach. It's the erratic nature of the guy that they can't hold their nose and vote for, and to the extent that he telegraphs in some way that he's looking to have a more traditional administration rather than something that's going to set the house on fire, I think that would be the smarter move for him. That's do not choose somebody MAGA. As for what Mike Pence did or didn't do, Mike Pence was the most loyal vice president we've ever seen, right up until the time Trump tried to get him to violate his oath to the Constitution and not certify the election as he had to do, right? So if what we don't want, as you're putting it, I think the last thing we want is somebody who would have gone where Mike Pence refused to go, someone who actually would have refused to certify the election. That is not what swing voters want. That may be
what Trump wants.
Yes, no, I don't. Well, that's what Trump wants if he's not thinking about what's best for his electoral chances. But if he's thinking what's best for his electoral chances, he wants somebody the opposite of that. He doesn't want somebody people say, well, if that guy had been vice president, that guy would have actually not certified the election. So I think it's all nonsense. But in 2028, when Trump doesn't want to leave office, blah blah blah, which I think is a fantasy, but that's what they think. This guy, if we didn't have Pence, we had that guy. Well, where would we be? You don't want, that's not, you want to calm everybody. Don't worry. It'll be fine. January 6th, I know, but it'll be fine. I'm going to choose a calm person, somebody you've known for 40, 30 years, somebody you trust. He's going to be right by my side. He trusts me, so why can't you trust me? That's how I see it.
Todd, what do you think?
Oh, I'm just going for the comedy relief here. So I think it should be Marco Rubio. And here's why I think you should pick Marco Rubio, because, all I do is read the news 4 hours a day, every day, my whole life. So I don't have much of an interesting life, but I do get a little tired when Trump was president of reading all the negativity. And I just think it would be fun to see the memes and the gifs of my favorite Donald Trump impression of Marco Rubio in the water. I think it's funny, and I laugh every single time I see it. I've never not laughed when I see Donald Trump do Marco Rubio in water. So I just think seeing those online every day, every time Marco Rubio does what you just called, I know him, uncomfortable. I'm calling it uncomfortably loyal. Like Mike Pence was super loyal to the point where watching him stand in the background on one of those press conferences was really uncomfortable. All I would do is watch Mike Pence as Trump would say something that Pence knew was false, and he would kind of squirm. I love the uncomfortable, loyal look for Marco Rubio for 4 years. I think that would be delightful, just because it's kind of funny that a guy who said these nasty things about Trump now has to kind of, sit there and be uncomfortably loyal. So that's what I think would be fun.
And another thing is, I always said that, from when the first Trump started running the first time, is like Trump has a stand-up comedian personality, and that wins him a lot of debate. I know you say debate is all about facts. I know that, but I'm saying for the general public,
oh yeah,
his comebacks. I mean, like you said, Marco Rubio, or only Rosie O'Donnell, or one of those comebacks is just like, it makes him, in a way, as mean as, like, you don't think when somebody's mean and funny, you don't think of him as mean. You think of him as funny.
Now there's a couple of different styles of humor. So just into the weeds, you can't find anybody more nerdy than me, because I'm a PhD who writes about humor. So that just doesn't get much. My master's thesis was about Andrew Dice Clay. My PhD was about interpersonal, inappropriate humor, et cetera. So there's different types of humor. And what I say is that Trump's jovial humor can get a lot of votes in, but sometimes his humor goes in the other direction and gets a little ugly. I think the Marco Rubio impression was just jovial. I just think it's funny. And so he's very, very good at that. But you are right. There are different sort of levels of humor that people want. Donald Trump, I think he's funny. And you know what? People, it's okay to vote on the presentation and debate. I'm telling you what I think you should vote on, which is the content. But I voted for funny people before in debates because I thought they were funny. Like literally one sentence that they said right, I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna vote for this person, And so I just, funny works. Yeah. It always has.
All right, Nikki Haley. Is it true, Brian, that she's not even invited to the conference?
I read that yesterday as well. I haven't heard anything counter to that. I mean, there's a 0 chance she's going to get picked. I mean, nobody who ran in 2020 ever really made the in 2024 even really made the consideration list. So yeah, I take everybody's word that she was not invited to the debate. I mean, not invited to the convention.
I really don't like her, but Noam loves her.
How come you don't like her?
They have drinks.
What don't you like about her?
I think she's nasty. I think she doesn't stand for something. I think she plays politics. She's very smart, very smart. But I think she changes. She's not a believer. Even if you like have a bad policy but you believe in it, that's fine with me. But if you just swing it, it's just not.
That always has been a knock on her, that she's sort of like a Mitt Romney weather vane. That she was with Trump, she was against Trump, she was with Trump, she was against Trump, she was with him. That's certainly sort of a fair criticism of her. I'm not sure all those votes at the end. I don't believe a lot of those votes were really for her. They were just sort of against Trump votes. I mean, even when she had suspended her campaign, she still got anywhere from 5 to 15, 18% in some states, and they were not voting for her. They were just voting against Donald Trump.
How about the VP?
I don't love her.
You had drinks with her.
I had drink. I found her very pleasant in person. I don't love her as a presidential candidate.
I was saying as a joke because you had drinks. Yeah. What about Tulsi Gabbard as a VP? She'll be great.
No. I mean, if Trump, let's say, were behind and had to throw some kind of long ball, then maybe that would be a consideration. I don't think so, because at the end of the day, she is still a former Democrat, semi recently, and while she's been, kicked Democrats and that's appeased Republicans, a lot of her initial policies are an anathema to many Republicans. But the fact is, Trump doesn't need a long ball pick here. I mean, he was winning before the debate. He's winning even more so now. I don't think the race is done. I don't subscribe to the notion that this race is over. Unless Biden stays in the race, then it's over. I do think if it's Harris or Whitmer or someone else, the race is going to shake up. It's going to get a lot closer. But like I said at the beginning, I just don't think that Trump has been a dominant political figure for nearly a decade now. Who he picks as VP, which is usually a window into how someone is going to govern or how they operate, that just doesn't exist here. People know who Trump is, both good and bad. They know what they're going to get. And I don't think the VP does much at all, other than bless somebody to take over after him, which is why I don't think he necessarily goes with a more establishment pick, because he gives that person a huge jump start in 2028.
Here's a good question I've got. Not to change this, but you're talking about the convention. Hey, do we expect Ted Cruz to give another speech at the convention? And if so, what are the plus or minuses on if it will be complimentary this time? I don't know if you all remember, but 4 years ago when Ted Cruz was giving a speech at the convention, 8 years ago, it didn't quite turn out as well as Trump had expected. So I can understand why Trump is kind of putting his hand down on who he wants at the convention, because that was a little bit of a shocker there. So I don't know.
That's a good question. Who shouldn't be there?
I have not seen a huge list, and I really haven't inquired as to who's speaking. I saw this morning that Mike Pompeo was going to be speaking. I'm guessing on foreign policy, but I don't know who they're going to have to speak. I haven't seen much of a list yet. I suspect each night will be about a different issue. There'll be an economy night and an immigration night. Sort of a overall catch-all, make America great night. So I think once we get a sense of what those nights are going to be, we'll sort of see who some of those speakers are. But there's not going to be a lot of folks speaking that have said anything unkind about the former president in the last few months. That's for sure.
I like that they said last few months, because you can't get somebody who doesn't say any kind thing for the last few years. Todd, and to everybody, actually, if you were like a Biden, would you want to debate again if you stayed in the race?
Oh, goodness. I've got pretty strong opinions on this. So I knew what was going to happen in the first debate. So here's what will happen in the next debate. Biden's not going to get much better. You just simply don't improve in these things. And one thing I do want to talk about, because nobody on this panel really has a lot of experience in this, these debates are hard. So 4 years ago, I gamed it out with Michael Smirkonish on his POTUS channel. So I said, you call me tomorrow live and you say, if you're Donald Trump, I have a couple questions I'm going to give you in the debate, and you answer them as if you're Trump. And he said, I will also do the same thing if you're Biden. You pretend you're Biden, you answer these questions as if you are the Democratic nominee, but he did not tell me the questions. They were about anything he wanted them to be about. And I'm a pretty smart guy, and I know my stuff, and I study a lot. This is difficult when you don't get to bring in notes, and they can ask you any question they want to on a wide variety of things. Now, I thought I did a really nice job, but it is difficult. So to think that Biden's all of a sudden going to be able to flip a switch, or even Trump, and let them become really better at answering questions or going through them, it's probably not going to happen. So in this next debate, here's my prediction. If I were Trump, who definitely likes to game the system, I wouldn't debate again if Biden is still running. Here's the reason. If Biden's still running and debates again, yeah, maybe it could go better for Biden, so Trump could worry about that a little bit. But let's say it goes the same. Biden's already had a bad debate. Trump can literally stand and say, I've already had one debate against Biden. I don't need to have another one. The reason why it would be to his advantage is one reason only, which is, do the Democrats still want to keep Biden? Because I'm telling you now, if there are calls from Democrats for Biden to step out now, and he stays in and they have another televised debate, those calls will come back, because he might improve, but his improvement will not be to the level that they want it to be.
What about you, Brian? What do you think?
I suspect Biden feels like he has to do another debate just to try to change the script. But it's hard to see how anything is gonna change people's minds. You know, as for Trump, he probably doesn't do another debate. He probably asserts that he doesn't want to get charged for elder abuse by some attorney general somewhere for participating in that. So there's not really a lot in it for Trump, other than maybe another nail in the Biden coffin. But I really don't think Joe Biden is going to be the nominee in September. I think that the Democrats are waiting for this NATO summit to get passed. They have to sort of awkwardly deal with the fact that the Republican convention is next week, and I think they're going to dump him. And I frankly think they have to dump him if they want any chance of winning the White House and possibly holding the House and Senate, because right now it is awful for Democrats.
Noam?
Well, all I was going to say about that was, Brian, I appreciate you being on the show, but everything you said earlier about, Biden and why he can't win and why they should dump, all that fairly well applies to both candidates now. But Trump is solid. The people behind him are solid. They aren't moving. So that's the real question, is what's moved. And I do want to point out what Biden's going to do badly in the next debate, because, that's kind of what I know. He has had trouble with his emotions in debates before. And so what happens is, once he gets wound up, is a very difficult time winding down. I guarantee you he's going to be overcoached for this next debate, and they're going to say, you came out, you're stiff, you're confused at times in answering the questions. We want you to be firm. We want you to show that you're lively. But the problem is, if he gets angry, he has difficulty turning it down in debates. And so the next thing you know, he's still angry the next question. He's yelling at a moderator. This has all happened before. So my prediction for the next debate is he'll be better on his policy answers, but he'll have some emotional times in there when he didn't bring it back like he's done in previous debates. So that's kind of why I think he'll have a shot.
I think you're right. He is certainly going to be angrier, and I think we're going to get that, get off my lawn, you young whippersnapper kind of vibe we're going to get from him. I don't see how they keep him. And again, even if he has a debate that is arguably better, and it's hard to not do better than the last debate, to your point earlier, it's still not going to be good enough. And he is an old man that is past his prime, and his place in history is now in jeopardy. His place in history was, from historians' perspective, I suspect, ended the reign of Donald Trump. That was what he did. Each president gets a sentence or two. But if he stays in this race and loses to Donald Trump, his legacy is very much tarnished. Now, I don't personally give a shit about Joe Biden's legacy, but I know he does, and I know Democrats do. So, I just don't see how anything Biden can do can save him at this point. Even if he has a great debate for him, it's still not going to be a really good debate overall here.
Go ahead, Noam.
What do I say? So first of all, just as he made me think about the overcoaching issue, one of the best examples we ever saw play out in real time of debate coaching was the Al Gore George Bush debates, where one debate one day he was too detached, the next day he was right on top of George Bush.
He was fronting him. He fronted him.
Yeah, he was going, like he was just like, it was so awkward to see him trying to implement his marching orders as if he had seen.
Dude, you know what the most painful thing on earth is? Coaching a debater to make the right argument, and you tell them exactly what to say, and then I go into the room and the debate starts and they fuck it up completely. Yeah. And it just makes me so mad. It's probably like you in comedy, right? There's certain timing things and certain ways you have to do things that have to be just right. But if you say it a little bit differently, or if you change one word, it completely ruins the joke. And it's the same thing here. It completely ruins the persuasion. So yeah, it bugs me to no end to have just coach, and then watch them go in, and you're just like, I don't know what happened.
But so, as you're right. As for the game theory of it all, anything is possible. You're dealing with probabilities here, and the probabilities are not 99 to 1. There's 30% chance, 40%, 50% chance. But I think the smart move is never to duck a debate within a primary. If you're the incumbent, I get why Trump didn't debate Nikki Haley. I'm not talking, but for Trump to back out of the debate against Joe Biden, for people who are looking for some excuse to rationalize to themselves why Biden is all right, it's just Trump's asking for a lot of problems. On the other hand, it's true that if he debates Biden again and Biden does rise to the occasion, that could give Biden a momentum at the 0 hour, which could turn it around for him. So nothing is certain, but I think backing out of debate is just the odds are that's always the bad decision.
But it's very risky to wait.
First impressions are difficult things to overcome. So I teach a lot of communication courses, and I got to tell you, that first debate, you're right. Even if Biden comes back and has a better debate, the first impression is still going to be of that first debate. Those things are hard to overcome. It's the primacy effect, and a lot of people will remember that. And as most of you have pointed out, it might not make a difference between voting for Biden or Trump, but it might make a difference between getting in your car and going to vote or not. And that first impression is a really big deal. And he absolutely just made a terrible first impression in that debate. But I do think as a panel, we need to be fair and just remember that most of these criticisms would also apply to Trump. His followers don't have the same standard for what they're looking for in a presidential candidate as Biden. But
I don't know if that's a fair argument. I don't know if that's a fair argument. I mean,
oh my God, all you've done is called Biden old and senile.
Biden's performance.
Else.
But you're judging it you're looking at a debate from an academic perspective, and that is not the rules here. So, and you cannot deny, no one can deny with a straight face that Joe Biden did not have one of the worst debates in modern American
But I don't
history.
think he's talking about specific.
The worst. There's never been a debate like it.
I don't understand. This is not being judged on an academic point system. This is a vibe that the American people get. And the big question for Biden going in is this guy capable of doing the job? And he failed proportion on that.
But you're talking about he failed in physically, like what his body. But there's also
he failed in responding to the biggest concern that voters had about him was his ability to do the job, and that was the one thing that he had to overcome. And on that,
and you confident with Trump doing the job?
What was your question?
Are you confident with Trump doing the job?
I think we all know exactly what we're going to get if Donald Trump wins.
I think so. I agree with you. We do.
both to the good for people that love him and to the bad the people that hate him.
Do you trust him managing two wars at the same time?
What?
Do you trust him managing two wars at the same time happening right now?
I certainly trust him over Joe Biden and over Kamala Harris without question. I've been on the show many times. You know, there's some things I'm unhappy with Donald Trump, but I do not trust Joe Biden to make the basic decisions. And I do believe that Kamala Harris is a legitimate progressive and liberal. And I take her word at that. And I have some real issues about her policies.
No, I know. And you said before you didn't like Trump.
I gotta say just one thing about Kamala Harris.
But just add one last thing. I just never understood the concept of party over country. That's my only point. You know,
it's not party. I think it's not fair to say party.
I'm not specifically talking about you.
So why are you saying it?
I think for a lot of folks, it's
I'm saying a lot of do.
It's policy that it's not the Republicans they're supporting. There are some people who are just Donald Trump or die. I mean, if Trump changes his position on something tomorrow, they're going to change with him. For me, it's policy. I agree. I'm a professional Republican because I agree with Republican policies. And I think there's a lot of voters out there who don't love Donald Trump. I would argue every one of those Nikki Haley voters clearly has some issues with Donald Trump's personality, but they are supportive of his policies and his ability, like it or not, to do the job, which whether you like Biden's policies or not, or even you're sort of lukewarm on them if you're in the middle, you have real questions about his ability to do the job and to your point earlier about getting a call at 3 a.m. I mean, does anyone think if, God forbid, missiles are launched and there's 8 or 9 minutes to make a decision? I don't really like Kamala Harris at all, but I believe she is of sound mind enough to make a decision that she believes is informed. I don't think Joe Biden has the mental acuity to do that, and it's pretty hard to argue differently on that.
It's just not. You're just making shit up, Brian. I'm so tired of listening to you. I'm just tired of listening to you kind of go through this. I'm not here to defend Biden. Well, look at my debate grades. I'm just here to defend the truth and a search for the truth. And when you say stuff like that, the hyperbole and over-exaggeration, at some point,
did you watch the debates? Did you see Joe Biden?
Let him finish, and then I want to get into it. Go ahead.
I mean, you're being ridiculous. You had 4 tweets. 4 you've reposted. And the one that you put up a month ago, the most recent, has nothing in it that's honest. Hunter Biden made millions of dollars as an unregistered foreign agent. That's a lie. He's not a foreign agent. But the DOJ doesn't want you focused on that. Not true. Though they gave him a smaller firearms charge just so Democrats can claim nobody's above the law. Also not true, while covering Biden's corruption. Dude, you have some difficulties with the truth. My job is to find the truth. We do not have the same position. You're a Republican consultant, and you said your job is to follow Republican themes. Then why didn't we have a 2020 Republican convention like, here's what our themes are? We didn't, because it changes with Donald Trump. Everything in the Republican Party changed with Donald Trump. My dad
That
is
is a true
lifelong
statement.
Republican.
The party has evolved, absolutely. But I think you're missing the point here, in that you're really trying to downplay Biden's epically poor performance and the legitimate question about his ability to do the job.
There's a difference between a poor performance and being senile and can't do the job. You absolutely have no evidence of the latter. The former, I provide evidence for.
I want to say a couple things. Hold on.
You're accusing me of towing the line? Come on.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. This issue of doing the job is interesting to me. One could argue, if a president says he's really not up to tough things after 4 in the afternoon, like if I was hiring somebody to manage my restaurant and they said to me, listen, after 4 p.m. I'm spent, you really can't, you can't count on me. Obviously you can't do the job. But the reality is, with the president of the United States, this is, not easy to accept, but there's a team around him. And the team is a group of professionals that represent a particular worldview that we are electing along with him. And they will be counted on to make or to implement decisions, even if they have to cajole the president, which are in line with that worldview. And if you strongly prefer that worldview to the alternative, you can make the argument, given the ridiculous choices in front of us, you're still better off voting for the kind of senile, or however you want to describe it, guy, because that really is not going to affect in any way the decisions that come out of that administration. Now, that's not democratic. You're supposed to elect a guy. It's a ridiculous situation for the country to find itself in. And there have been times where important decisions were made when a president bucked his own team, whether it's Lincoln or Kennedy or whatever it is. So it's not a perfect solution. But if you have to choose between the probability that the Biden team that you're electing, despite think the worst about Biden, will give you the decision-making from the executive branch that you are most comfortable with as a citizen, as opposed to Trump, and however you view him, you can still defend the vote. I'd have to be honest. Having said that, I don't think Trump's policies actually are that offensive to most Americans. It's Trump the man, I think, which is really the problem. So this is really a dicey decision before the American people. As far as Kamala Harris, I just want to say the other thing. I don't know how progressive she is or she isn't, but it really was buried that this woman was charged from the left of keeping people in prison who she knew were guilty of crime, who knew were innocent of crimes. This woman kept innocent people in prison knowingly. This woman fought to prevent a guy on death row from getting a DNA test that might have proved his innocence. This woman is horrible. Progressive doesn't begin to, I don't say anybody progressive is horrible. I don't find Bernie Sanders horrible. The stuff that she has done, and it's been Lara Bazelon, Reason Magazine, The Atlantic Magazine, was it Connor Friedersdorf in The Atlantic Magazine has written about it. Nick Kristof has written about it. We're not talking about right-wing assassins. The stuff that this woman has done is akin to human rights violations in Cuba. This woman is awful. And morally, if people were to be honest and come to grips with the stuff that she's done, she is worse than Trump in terms of what she's capable of. Can you imagine knowingly keeping an innocent person in prison? What could be worse than that? Who could do that? But having said that, somebody said policies are, you live with policies. So that's the way it is.
Rick Perry executed one.
Rick Perry executed an innocent person? Well,
Cameron Todd Willingham.
If he did it knowingly, I hope he goes to hell for that. I mean,
he did. He did. I assume you're from California because you seem to know a lot about Kamala Harris. I mean, I'm a Midwesterner, so I don't really. I'm not.
Google it when we finish. There's a lot of articles.
Oh no, I defer. I defer to your opinion. I defer to others on the opinion. She's not something I've studied very much. When she was running for vice president or for president, obviously a little bit.
Well, I hope after this specific election, both parties wake up and start to have nominees that should be a good representation. And I agree with Noam. Is this is one of the most beautiful thing about this country is we don't have the president doesn't do anything. There's a whole government, but he is the representative. He's the person. He's the face of the United States. So it should be, should be good representation.
Do most Californians dislike Harris? I just don't know anything. I don't know much about popularity, etc.
There's actually a good article from New York Times just came yesterday, I think, about the weaknesses and strength of Kamala Harris, and it says exactly kind of what Noam was saying in that. She was very tough in California, so that's one of the strengths, but also her weaknesses is what she did over there. It's very, very bad. There's a couple of she denied a couple of people DNA tests that will exonerate them, and just no.
Well, you don't know if we exonerate them or not, but I find her one of the most detestable figures we've had in modern political history, not because of her policies, not because of that. I don't even really know what her policies are, to be honest, but she really, really disturbed me. As I said, Bernie Sanders, I know his policies and I hate his policies, I find him to be a pretty winning guy. I don't have any, I don't cringe. I think he's pretty honest about what he believes. I kind of like him, but I find her detestable. Anyway.
All right, so let's end with the final prediction. Who's running tickets for both parties and who's the final winner? Who wants to go first? Brian, you want to go?
Sure. I think it's going to be Trump against Harris.
Okay.
And I think it is going to come down to Wisconsin. I think Wisconsin is going to be the key to 270. I think that Harris probably picks a boring white guy as her running mate, but at the end of the day, it's Trump v. Harris, and I think it's going to come down to Wisconsin. And I think Trump it's going to be real close in one of those states, maybe even Florida close in one of those states to get him to 270. But I think the Democrats have done themselves a real disservice by not having a robust primary campaign earlier in the process, and I think they're going to pay the price this year for doing that.
Todd, prediction?
Oh, it changes day to day. I'm not one really into predicting just because it moves so quickly, right? Biden's giving a speech tonight. Who knows what he's about to say? Who knows how that'll go? So I don't really know what will end up, and I don't really predict that. I'm good at predicting debate stuff and what happens because of that. So obviously Trump's going to be in there. I don't know who his running mate will be, but I agree with most of you that the vice presidential candidate pick for Trump is not as important. So I think you're all pretty much on point on that.
Here's a debate question for you: Kamala versus Trump in the debate.
Trump would probably win that debate. Win that election. Yeah, Trump would probably win that election. That's just based off of listening to you all and seeing the polls, et cetera. Just based off what I know right now.
Noam,
what's the question?
Don't ruin your record. You're 5-0.
For what?
Prediction.
Predict what? Who's
prediction for the tickets, both tickets, and the final winner of the election?
I don't have a prediction for the ticket. I feel like if the grown-ups in the room prevail, Harris will not be the nominee because I don't think she can win. I think the appeals to current polls for a savvy political operative, they will not put much stock in the current polls. The reality is that if they choose a moderate, appealing Democrat, whoever, I don't know the Democratic Party that well. I've said before, when I was a kid, we knew very well who was on the bench. Mario Cuomo, Ted Kennedy, they were kind of larger than life figures that were present. Now, the Democratic Party, I couldn't pick them out of a lineup. But if one of these people is good, there's going to be such a slingshot effect, such exuberance among Democrats and moderate people. There's going to be such hagiographic coverage by the press and pick videos of them helping old ladies, whatever. There's going to be every institution in America is going to move in to elevate this new candidate, whoever it is. The polls are immediately going to swing in favor of the new candidate. I would say overnight. So if they're smart, they will not choose Kamala Harris. But I don't know.
No, that sort of is the Midwestern feel as well. Nobody in the Midwest knows who she is. She doesn't seem that popular, et cetera, et cetera. I will tell you a kind of funny story about that, but that's it's neither here nor there. I think I agree.
No, tell
with you.
the story. Tell the story. Tell the story.
Well, it's just when Kamala Harris was running, one of the first things people would ask me is, in the Midwest, do you think she's high? And it was just like everybody in the Midwest thought she was high when she was speaking all the time. And so they wanted me to answer that question. I'm like, I don't think so. No, I just think that's her speaking style. I'm telling you, at least a dozen people asked me that.
Yeah, yeah. And you guys are the ones who are going to choose, people of your kind of disposition.
Todd, I'm trying to figure out the whole podcast, who you look like. And I finally got it. Finally. Ethan Hawke, Training Day.
Oh my God, you are the second person to say that. So here's what happened. I just did
exactly that look. Training Day.
This is all brand new. And so I'm going through security at TSA, and she's just like, you look like Ethan Hawke. And I'm like, you're a winner. So that's the end of that conversation.
I know debates, and you're a winner.
All right, well, guys, thank you so much. We'll see. I think the press conference tonight will be a key. We'll love to have you both again soon. And
what is this press conference tonight? Just tell me.
The NATO press conference, the post-NATO press conference.
Oh, I don't know about it. Oh,
but it's going to be the first time that Biden's
questions from reporters.
Yeah,
you can't avoid them.
So he will have to. It's only him, and it's going to be against the report. So it's going to be something.
Crazy time. Okay, bye everybody.
Have a good one. Thank you guys very much. Enjoy the show. Good night.